Baseball's most powerful people have spent decades burying stories that would destroy the sport's wholesome image. From the first overall draft pick who never made it to the majors because of a bar fight, to corked bats hidden in ceiling tiles, to team officials dealing deadly drugs to their own players, these are the scandals MLB prayed you'd never discover. Today we're diving into baseball's darkest secrets, ranked from suspicious to absolutely shocking. Shoeless Joe Jackson's innocence. Jackson turned into baseball's version of Jesus Christ after getting banned for allegedly throwing the 1919 World Series. Here was a poor kid from South Carolina who hit 356 over his career and became the tragic hero of America's pastime. Hollywood loved the story so much they made multiple movies about his supposed innocence, turning him into this pure soul corrupted by evil teammates and greedy owners. The thing is, Jackson's actual story was way messier than any movie wanted to show. The evidence against Jackson makes no sense when you look at it. He hit 375 in the World Series that his team supposedly threw. He had 12 hits in 8 games while most of his teammates were striking out on purpose. But then there's his grand jury testimony where he allegedly admitted to taking money from gamblers. The problem is the original transcript disappeared, so we only have newspaper accounts of what he said. Some reports claim he confessed to everything, while others say he denied any wrongdoing. Jackson supposedly tried to come clean about the fix multiple times. He allegedly went to White Sox owner Charles Comiskey's office to report the gambling scheme before the World Series started, but Comiskey wouldn't see him. Jackson also claimed he tried to return the $5,000 the gamblers gave him, but his teammates wouldn't let him. These stories make Jackson look like the only honest player on a corrupt team, which is exactly what his supporters want to believe. Jackson's defenders treat his batting average like it's written in stone. They point to his World Series numbers and say, no player trying to lose games would hit that well. But they ignore all the testimony and evidence that suggests Jackson knew about the fix and took money anyway. The case became this perfect example of fans choosing the facts that support their favorite narrative while dismissing everything else. The debate over Jackson's guilt or innocence lasted over 100 years. Both sides had passionate supporters who argued their case like lawyers defending a murder suspect. Jackson's defenders formed groups and petitioned Major League Baseball for decades to clear his name. The conspiracy theorists believed Jackson was the fall guy for a corrupt system that needed someone to blame. Then in May 2025, something unexpected happened. Jackson was officially reinstated by Major League Baseball, making him eligible for the Hall of Fame after being banned for 105 years. This decision created a template for how baseball would handle its next controversial figure. Pete Rose's sacrificial lamb theory. Charlie Hustle went from being Mr. Baseball to the sport's most famous outcast in August 1989. Pete Rose had spent his entire career as the scrappy hustler who embodied everything fans loved about the game. He dove headfirst into bases, ran to first base on walks, and played with more heart than talent. Then overnight, he became the guy who bet on his own team and got banned for life. The theory goes that Rose was handpicked as the perfect fall guy when Major League Baseball needed to prove they were serious about gambling. Rose was visible, controversial, and had enough baggage that fans wouldn't feel too sorry for him. The timing was suspicious because gambling problems were supposedly widespread throughout baseball, but only Rose got the death penalty. According to conspiracy theorists, MLB needed one big dramatic punishment to show they were cleaning house without actually investigating how deep the corruption went. Rose's lifetime ban in 1989 created the exact symbol MLB wanted. Commissioner Bart Giamatti announced the punishment with this grave tone, like he was announcing a war crime. The ban was permanent, irreversible, and came with this moral lecture about the integrity of the game. Rose became the cautionary tale that every player would remember whenever they thought about placing a bet. The theory suggests that bigger names and team insiders quietly escaped punishment, while Rose absorbed all the public attention. Rose was the visible target who drew fire away from owners, executives, and other players who might have been involved in similar activities. The investigation focused entirely on Rose's betting habits without looking at systemic gambling problems that allegedly existed throughout the sport. Rose became more famous for what he bet on than for his 4,256 career hits. The hit king turned into the betting king in public memory. His record-breaking career got overshadowed by stories about his bookmaking debts and his habit of wagering on Cincinnati Reds games while managing the team. Rose went from being baseball royalty to being the sport's biggest villain. The punishment was designed for maximum drama and public impact. MLB made sure everyone understood that Rose's ban was forever, and that he would never be eligible for the Hall of Fame. The severity sent a clear message while conveniently ending the investigation before it could expose other gambling connections. The problem with this conspiracy theory is the complete lack of evidence that MLB covered up widespread gambling to protect bigger names. No documents or testimonies have ever surfaced showing a coordinated effort to scapegoat Rose while letting others escape. Rose's ban worked as powerful theater that satisfied the public's demand for justice, but the conspiracy angle remains pure speculation. Barry Bonds' blacklist theory. Barry Bonds hit .276 with 28 home runs and a 1.046 OPS at age 42 in 2007, then couldn't get a single job offer from any of the 30 major league teams. To put this into perspective, players hitting .200 with no power were signing multi-year contracts while baseball's all-time home run king sat at home watching TV. This situation was so ridiculous that even casual fans started asking questions about what was really happening behind the scenes. Bonds was supposedly the greatest hitter who ever lived, but he became completely untouchable after the 2007 season. The theory is that team owners secretly agreed to freeze him out of baseball despite his obvious ability to still produce at an elite level. Bonds had just broken Hank Aaron's home run record and was still drawing walks at a historic rate, but somehow no team wanted his services. The numbers from his final season make the blacklist theory almost impossible to ignore. Bonds posted a .480 on-base percentage and led the National League in walks while hitting 28 home runs in just 126 games. Meanwhile, players like Juan Pierre signed 3-year deals worth $44 million despite hitting .291 with zero power and terrible defense. The contrast was so obvious that fans started connecting dots about organized collusion. The theory suggests that owners worked together to punish Bonds for being too honest about performance-enhancing drugs during the steroid era. While other players lied to Congress and denied everything, Bonds admitted to using substances he got from his trainer. His honesty apparently made him more dangerous than the players who committed perjury and continued lying about their PED use. Bonds also faced federal perjury charges and constant negative media coverage that made him toxic from a publicity standpoint. Team executives could point to his legal troubles and clubhouse reputation as reasons to avoid signing him without admitting they were scared of his steroid connections. The perfect storm of legal issues and bad press gave owners cover for what looked like coordinated punishment. The players' union eventually filed a grievance claiming that owners had colluded to keep Bonds unemployed. The arbitration process found no evidence of organized collusion between teams, but the patterns were still suspicious. No formal conspiracy was proven, but the coincidence of 30 teams all independently deciding to avoid a productive player seemed unlikely. Bonds never played again after 2007, even though he clearly had years of productive baseball left in him. The stigma and negative sentiment around his name effectively ended his career without any official punishment or ban. The lack of formal proof didn't matter because the results spoke for themselves. The juiced ball theory. Scientists started measuring baseball seam heights with precision instruments like they were investigating the Kennedy assassination. Physicists published research papers analyzing the drag coefficients of different baseball constructions. These weren't casual fans with too much time on their hands. These were actual researchers using laboratory equipment to prove that Major League Baseball was secretly changing the baseballs to manipulate offensive numbers during rating slumps. The allegations claim that MLB doctors baseballs whenever they need more home runs to boost television viewership and attendance. The theory suggests that league executives monitor ratings and attendance figures, then quietly adjust ball specifications to create more exciting offensive environments. When games get boring and fans start losing interest, suddenly the baseballs start flying out of stadiums at unusual rates. The timing of home run surges looks suspicious when you examine the patterns. The late 1990s saw massive offensive explosions right when baseball was recovering from the 1994 strike and needed to win fans back. Then the 2017 to 2019 period produced another home run boom during a time when younger audiences were losing interest in baseball's slower pace. The coincidence seemed too convenient for conspiracy theorists to ignore. MLB purchased Rawlings in 2018, giving the league direct control over baseball manufacturing for the first time in history. This corporate acquisition meant MLB could theoretically modify ball specifications without needing approval from outside suppliers. The timing raised questions about whether the league wanted more control over offensive environments through direct manufacturing oversight. The 2019 season featured what conspiracy theorists called the Goldilocks ball that was allegedly used in high-profile games, including Yankees showcases. These specially selected baseballs were supposedly designed to travel further and create more exciting offensive displays for television audiences and premium games. The theory suggested MLB was using different ball types for different situations. Fans started treating exit velocity data and launch angle measurements like classified government documents. Online communities analyzed every home run with scientific precision, looking for patterns that would prove ball manipulation. Social media became filled with charts and graphs showing how batted ball distances changed mysteriously during certain time periods. The 2022 season revealed that 3 different types of baseballs were actually in circulation with varying performance characteristics. MLB acknowledged that different ball constructions existed but claimed the variations were unintentional manufacturing differences rather than deliberate manipulation. This admission gave conspiracy theorists more ammunition for their theories about secret ball doctoring. The pattern of MLB gaining manufacturing control, coinciding with suspicious offensive explosions, created compelling circumstantial evidence for conspiracy theorists. The corporate connections and statistical anomalies provided plenty of material for theories about deliberate manipulation. But proving intentional ball doctoring remained impossible without access to internal league documents. These ball conspiracy theories prepared fans to question other perfectly timed moments in baseball history. Derek Jeter's scripted walk-off. Disney wouldn't write something as cheesy as Derek Jeter's final at-bat at Yankee Stadium on September 25, 2014. The captain stepped to the plate in the bottom of the 9th inning with the score tied and delivered a walk-off single to right field. The crowd went crazy. His teammates mobbed him at first base, and Jeter got carried off the field like he had just won the World Series. It was so perfect that conspiracy theorists immediately started asking questions about whether the whole thing was staged. The theory suggests that Jeter's walk-off hit was orchestrated by Major League Baseball for maximum dramatic impact. This wasn't just any regular season game. The Yankees were already eliminated from playoff contention, which meant the pressure was off and the stakes were low enough that a scripted moment wouldn't affect anything important. The timing created the perfect opportunity for baseball theater without consequences. September games with no playoff implications provided the ideal cover for manufactured drama. The Orioles had nothing to gain or lose from the outcome, and the Yankees just wanted to give their retiring captain a proper send-off. The low-stakes environment made coordination easier, because competitive integrity wasn't really at risk when the games didn't matter for standings. Pitcher Evan Meek allegedly threw the perfect pitch on command to create Jeter's storybook ending. Meek was a middle reliever who had spent most of his career bouncing between teams, so conspiracy theorists figured he would be willing to help create a special moment for baseball's biggest star. The pitch was supposedly designed to be hittable without being obvious, giving Jeter the chance to play hero one last time. The moment felt too cinematically perfect to be pure coincidence according to fans who remembered Jeter's entire career. Jeter had always seemed to come through in clutch situations with perfect timing, so his finale fitting the same pattern made some people suspicious. His career was already filled with so many dramatic moments that fans expected his final at-bat to be scripted too. Major League Baseball needed a dramatic send-off for their most marketable star in the sport's most famous ballpark. Jeter represented everything the league wanted to promote about baseball tradition and clutch performance. A boring final at-bat would have wasted the perfect opportunity to create lasting memories and positive publicity. The complete lack of hard evidence for any coordination between teams makes this theory pure speculation. No documents, recordings, or insider testimonies have ever emerged to support the idea that Jeter's walk-off was planned in advance. Meek himself described the moment as just a great day for baseball rather than admitting to any conspiracy or coordination with Jeter or league officials. Jeter's perfect Hollywood ending made fans more suspicious of other conveniently timed baseball moments throughout history. Cal Ripken Jr.'s power outage. A citywide power failure hit Baltimore on August 14th, 1997, exactly when Cal Ripken Jr. needed it most. The Iron Man had played in 2,632 consecutive games, but rumors were swirling that he was dealing with personal problems and might need a break from his streak. Then the lights went out at Camden Yards during a game against the Seattle Mariners, creating the perfect excuse for Ripken to miss a game without officially ending his streak. The Camden Yards blackout theory suggests that Orioles officials deliberately caused the power outage to protect Ripken's consecutive games record. The streak had become bigger than baseball itself, generating massive publicity and revenue for the team and the sport. According to conspiracy theorists, team executives would do anything to keep the streak alive, including sabotaging their own stadium's electrical system. The August 14th outage happened during the fifth inning and forced the game to be suspended until the next day. This gave Ripken a full night of rest without technically missing a game, since suspended games don't count against consecutive game streaks. The timing seemed too convenient for fans who were already suspicious about the lengths the Orioles would go to protect their biggest star. The personal scandal angle makes this theory even more dramatic. Rumors had been circulating about Ripken's wife, Kelly, having an affair with actor Kevin Costner, who was in Baltimore filming a movie. The theory suggests that Ripken was emotionally distracted and physically exhausted from dealing with the situation, making him desperate for a break from playing every single day. Orioles officials supposedly orchestrated the blackout to give Ripken time to handle his personal crisis while keeping the streak technically intact. The conspiracy theory treats team executives like comic book villains who control Baltimore's electrical grid through some secret network of corrupt utility workers. The idea that baseball officials could coordinate citywide power failures sounds like something from a superhero movie. The official explanation blamed circuit faults and safety concerns for the outage that affected thousands of homes and businesses across Baltimore. City officials said the power grid experienced technical problems that had nothing to do with baseball or Camden Yards specifically. The timing was purely coincidental according to utility companies and city representatives. Both Ripken and Costner denied the affair rumors and any connection between personal problems and the power outage. Costner called the whole story ridiculous gossip, while Ripken maintained that he never needed any special help to continue his streak. The plausibility of coordinating a citywide blackout for one baseball player is extremely low, but the connection to protecting Ripken's sacred record makes the theory irresistible to conspiracy-minded fans. Albert Belle's bat heist. The White Sox turned equipment tampering into Ocean's 11 with baseball bats. What should have been a simple rules violation became baseball's most elaborate heist story, complete with ceiling crawls, secret swaps, and more drama than any Hollywood caper movie ever produced. The corked bat saga started during a July 1994 game between the Chicago White Sox and Cleveland Indians. Albert Belle was having another monster season, hitting home runs at a pace that made pitchers nervous and umpires suspicious. Belle's bats looked normal from the outside, but conspiracy theorists believed they were secretly modified with cork to make them lighter and more powerful. The dramatic moment came when umpires confiscated Belle's bat during the game for inspection. Belle exploded with anger when the umpires took his bat away, screaming and throwing a tantrum that made everyone in the stadium realize something important was happening. The bat disappeared into the umpire's room, where it would be stored overnight before being sent to the league office for official examination. This is where Jason Grimsley enters the story with his alleged Mission Impossible operation. Grimsley was a White Sox pitcher who supposedly volunteered to retrieve Belle's corked bat from the umpire's room through an elaborate break-in. The plan involved crawling through ceiling tiles above the umpire's room, dropping down into the secure area, and swapping Belle's illegal bat with a legal one from teammate Dave Martinez. Grimsley allegedly spent hours crawling through dusty ceiling spaces like Tom Cruise in a spy movie. He had to navigate around pipes and electrical wiring while trying not to make noise that would alert security guards. The whole operation required perfect timing and coordination with other White Sox players who were creating distractions. A teammate's legal bat was supposedly swapped for Belle's illegal one during this covert midnight mission. The theory suggests that Grimsley successfully replaced the evidence and crawled back through the ceiling tiles without getting caught. The whole thing had more plot twists than any movie studio would dare to write. The X-ray examination later confirmed that the confiscated bat was indeed corked, leading to Belle's 10-game suspension. But conspiracy theorists claim this was the wrong bat and that Grimsley's mission had actually failed. The league office found cork inside the bat, which proved tampering had occurred. The documented facts show that someone actually broke ceiling tiles trying to access the umpire's room that night. But the larger conspiracy theory about successful bat swapping relies more on dramatic imagination than solid evidence. Belle's bat caper prepared fans to see betrayal and deception in baseball's most trusted positions. Mike Piazza's pitch tipping theory. This theory explains the Mets' perpetual disappointment better than any other explanation fans have come up with over the years. The idea is that Mike Piazza, the Hall of Fame catcher, who was supposed to be the team's franchise player, was secretly helping opposing hitters by tipping pitches during crucial games. This conspiracy theory gained serious traction after the 2004 All-Star Game in Houston, when some fans noticed Piazza's unusual behavior behind the plate. The 2004 All-Star Game conspiracy claims that Piazza deliberately gave away pitch sequences to American League hitters while catching for the National League team. Piazza was selected as the starting catcher for the NL, which should have been an honor for any player. But conspiracy theorists believe he used this platform to get revenge on his own teammates and the baseball establishment that had failed to protect him from headhunting pitchers. The backstory involves Piazza's ongoing feud with Roger Clemens that created the perfect motivation for sabotage. Clemens had been throwing at Piazza for years, culminating in the famous broken bat incident during the 2000 World Series. When Clemens threw a piece of Piazza's shattered bat toward him during Game 2, it created one of the most heated moments in World Series history and established permanent bad blood between the two players. The Houston All-Star Game became the perfect stage for Piazza's alleged revenge against Clemens and the American League pitchers who had been targeting him throughout his career. The theory suggests that Piazza used his position behind the plate to signal what pitches were coming, giving AL hitters a huge advantage during the exhibition game. This betrayal supposedly represented Piazza's way of getting back at the system. The theory expanded to explain why the Mets consistently failed in the postseason during Piazza's prime years with the team. Fans desperately needed someone to blame for the organization's chronic inability to win championships despite having talented rosters. Piazza became the perfect scapegoat because his alleged betrayal provided a simple explanation for complex organizational failures. Mets fans were so desperate for answers about their team's problems that they started blaming their own Hall of Fame catcher for sabotaging games. The franchise had been built around Piazza as their cornerstone player, but the conspiracy theory painted him as the secret villain who was undermining everything from within. The history of Clemens throwing the broken bat at Piazza during the 2000 World Series gave conspiracy theorists all the motivation they needed to believe in ongoing revenge plots. The incident had been replayed on television countless times and represented the peak of baseball drama between two future Hall of Famers. Most baseball analysts dismiss the theory as pure fan frustration and desperate speculation without any real evidence. The idea endures because it provides Mets fans with a simple villain to explain their team's complex organizational problems. The Expos sabotage theory. The Expos went from playoff contenders to tragic footnotes faster than a reliever's October ERA in Game 7. Montreal had built something special by 1994 with young stars like Larry Walker, Moises Alou, and Pedro Martinez forming the core of what looked like a championship team. Then everything fell apart so quickly and systematically that Canadian fans started wondering if someone was pulling strings behind the scenes. The theory suggests that Major League Baseball deliberately sabotaged Montreal to justify moving the franchise to a more profitable American market. Montreal was always the odd team out as the only Canadian franchise in a league dominated by American interests. According to conspiracy theorists, league executives never wanted baseball in Canada and were just waiting for the right opportunity to pull the plug. The Expos had their best record in franchise history during the strike-shortened 1994 season. They were 74-40 when the players' strike ended the season in August, giving them the best winning percentage in baseball. Montreal finally had the roster and momentum to compete for their first World Series championship, but the strike killed their dreams at exactly the wrong time. The franchise's rapid decline after 1994 seemed too systematic to be pure bad luck. Montreal's payroll got slashed year after year, while other teams spent freely on free agents. The front office traded away every productive player the moment they became expensive, creating a cycle of rebuilding that never actually led anywhere. Star players left Montreal as soon as their contracts expired, leaving fans with nobody to root for. The theory claims that MLB owners deliberately marginalized the Expos to make relocation to Washington look inevitable. Montreal's attendance dropped as the team got worse, creating the perfect excuse to move the franchise to a larger American market. The downward spiral became a self-fulfilling prophecy that served the league's long-term interests. Canadian fans developed the ultimate persecution complex about American market bias and currency exchange problems. They believed MLB never gave Montreal a fair chance to compete financially with American teams. The conspiracy theory provided a villain for fans who watched their team get dismantled piece by piece. The emotional weight of losing a franchise that was finally ready to compete for a title made the sabotage theory irresistible to heartbroken fans. Montreal had waited decades for a winner, only to see their championship window slam shut. The lack of conclusive evidence for a deliberate plot against Montreal doesn't stop the theory from thriving on fan sentiment and organizational suspicion. The theory survives because it gives meaning to what felt like senseless loss, showing how conspiracy theories are often about powerlessness more than proof. These baseball conspiracy theories reveal fans' desperate need for explanations when randomness feels too cruel. Nobody wants to believe that Shoeless Joe got banned for nothing or that Barry Bonds couldn't find a job because of bad timing. The theories function as cultural mirrors showing how humans demand to see patterns and assign blame when things don't make sense. Baseball creates the perfect environment for conspiracy thinking because the sport moves slowly enough for fans to analyze every detail. The game gives people time to connect dots that probably aren't related. In baseball, randomness isn't just background noise. It's an invitation to craft stories bigger than the scoreboard. J.R. Richard. J.R. Richard was the most feared pitcher in baseball during the late 1970s. The towering 6'8" right-hander threw his fastball at 100 miles per hour when most pitchers topped out at 90. His slider broke so sharply that batters often swung at pitches in the dirt. Richard struck out 303 batters in 1978, then followed that with 313 strikeouts in 1979 while posting a 2.71 ERA. In 1980, he was 10-4 with a 1.90 ERA and had been named the All-Star starter. These numbers put him on pace for the Hall of Fame before his 30th birthday. The Houston Astros had built their entire pitching staff around Richard's dominance. He was their ace, their ticket to playoff success, and their most valuable asset. Richard's intimidating presence on the mound made him nearly unhittable for opposing teams. Batters stepped into the box knowing they were facing someone who could overpower them with pure velocity or fool them with his devastating breaking ball. Early in the 1980 season, Richard started complaining about unusual symptoms that affected his pitching performance. He told team officials about persistent arm fatigue that didn't improve with rest. The dizziness he experienced on the mound was unlike anything he had felt before. Richard also reported feeling weak during games, symptoms that clearly indicated something serious was wrong with his health. The Astros' response to Richard's complaints revealed disturbing attitudes within the organization. Team officials dismissed his concerns as mental weakness rather than physical problems. Media members suggested Richard was making excuses for declining performance or trying to avoid pitching in important games. Some teammates questioned whether Richard was tough enough to play through normal aches and pains that all pitchers experience. Those signs were repeatedly downplayed despite Richard's status as the team's star performer. A Black Star athlete was being told that his pain wasn't real and that he needed to prove his toughness. Richard faced pressure to keep pitching despite symptoms that were clearly affecting his ability to perform at an elite level. He did not receive timely, thorough examination before his collapse. Richard continued pitching through these symptoms because he felt he had no choice. He needed to prove he wasn't weak or making excuses for poor performance. Every time he took the mound, he was fighting against his body's warning signs while trying to maintain his reputation as the game's most dominant pitcher. On July 30, 1980, Richard was warming up before a game when his body finally gave out completely. He collapsed during his pregame routine and suffered a massive stroke caused by a blood clot. Richard never pitched again. The Astros inducted him into their Hall of Fame in 2019, and he died in 2021 at age 71. Richard's case showed how dismissing player concerns could have devastating consequences. But sometimes the tragedy came from decisions that no organization could control. Brian Taylor. The New York Yankees handed Brian Taylor a $1.55 million signing bonus in 1991, making him the first overall pick in the MLB draft. Selected out of Williamsport High School, Taylor received what was then a record bonus for a high school player. He had everything scouts look for in a future ace pitcher. His fastball reached 100 miles per hour consistently, and his curveball dropped off the table like few pitchers could manage. Professional scouts called Taylor the best high school pitcher they had ever evaluated. His minor league performance backed up the hype completely. At Fort Lauderdale, he posted a 2.57 ERA with 187 strikeouts in 161 innings. In 1993, he went 13-7 with about 150 strikeouts in Double-A. The Yankees organization projected him as their ace of the future, someone who could anchor their rotation for the next decade. Taylor's combination of velocity and breaking ball movement was considered generational talent. December 18, 1993, started as a normal night out for Taylor and his brother during the offseason. Taylor was focused on his upcoming spring training and preparing for what many expected to be his major league debut season. The evening took a devastating turn when his brother got into a physical altercation with another patron at a bar in North Carolina. The fight escalated quickly as the two men wrestled on the floor. Taylor made a split-second decision that would destroy his entire career. Instead of staying out of the conflict, he jumped into the fight to help his brother. During the chaos, Taylor was thrown to the ground and his shoulder absorbed tremendous damage. The impact tore his labrum completely and damaged his shoulder capsule beyond repair. Dr. Frank Jobe, who examined Taylor after the injury, called it among the worst shoulder injuries he had ever seen. After extensive surgery and a full season of rehabilitation, Taylor attempted his comeback. The results were devastating for someone who had been considered a sure thing. His once dominant fastball had dropped roughly 8 miles per hour from 100 miles per hour. The velocity loss made his fastball much easier for professional hitters to catch up to. Even worse, Taylor could no longer command his curveball for strikes. The pitch that had made him special was effectively gone. He never reached the majors. The injury cost him the fastball and the curve that made him special. Taylor became one of only 3 first overall picks in MLB history who never made it to the major leagues. One moment of poor judgment eliminated years of development and millions of dollars in potential earnings. But Taylor's story was just bad luck and worse decisions. Sometimes the system itself failed players in ways that were far more sinister. Jose Fernandez. Jose Fernandez represented everything the Miami Marlins organization had hoped for when they drafted him in 2011. The young Cuban pitcher had escaped his homeland on his 4th attempt, making a dangerous journey across the ocean to reach America. His talent was obvious from his first professional appearances. Fernandez won National League Rookie of the Year in 2013 with a 2.19 ERA and 187 strikeouts in just 172 innings pitched. Tommy John surgery sidelined Fernandez for most of 2014 and part of 2015, but he returned stronger than ever. His 2016 season showed he had fully recovered from the elbow reconstruction surgery. Fernandez posted a 2.86 ERA with 253 strikeouts in 182 innings, proving he was back to being one of baseball's most dominant young pitchers. The Marlins built their future around his arm, knowing they had a generational talent who could anchor their rotation for years to come. September 25th, 2016 started as a normal day off for Fernandez during the final week of the regular season. He decided to take his 32-foot boat out for a late-night ride with 2 friends, Eduardo Rivero and Emilio Macias. The boat was traveling at approximately 65 miles per hour when it struck a jetty off Miami Beach. The impact was devastating and violent. All 3 men were killed instantly when the vessel crashed into the rocky outcropping. The Coast Guard found the overturned boat hours later. The autopsy results revealed information that made the tragedy even more disturbing. Fernandez had cocaine metabolites and a blood alcohol level of 0.147 in his system at the time of the crash. The crash involved impairment while operating a high-speed vessel at night. These findings raise serious questions about the circumstances that led to the fatal accident. The Marlins and Major League Baseball preferred to focus on his baseball achievements, rather than discuss the troubling details of that night. His death at age 24 left the organization and community devastated emotionally and operationally. The team lost its projected long-term ace, and his sudden loss left a massive hole in their rotation and their future plans. The circumstances surrounding that fatal night show how quickly poor decisions can destroy not just individual lives, but entire organizations that depend on them. But substance abuse in baseball wasn't always hidden from public view. Sometimes players performed their most memorable feats while completely impaired. Doc Ellis. Doc Ellis threw one of the most famous no-hitters in baseball history on June 12, 1970. But what made this game legendary had nothing to do with his pitching mechanics. Ellis was starting for the Pittsburgh Pirates against the San Diego Padres in what appeared to be a routine Friday night game. The Pirates won 2-0, and Ellis was having a decent year with his usual mix of fastballs and sliders. What Ellis revealed years later about that game completely shocked the baseball world and exposed just how normalized drug use had become in the 1970s professional sports. Ellis claimed he had taken LSD around noon that day while he was in Los Angeles, not realizing he was scheduled to pitch that evening. The acid had already taken full effect by the time he discovered he needed to get to the ballpark and take the mound. Ellis didn't reveal this story publicly until 1984, which shows how the culture around drug use in baseball took time to be admitted to and discussed openly. Ellis described the experience as completely surreal and unlike anything a professional athlete should attempt. He said the baseball appeared to change sizes throughout the game, sometimes looking tiny and other times appearing massive. The catcher would disappear from his vision entirely during certain moments, forcing Ellis to essentially guess where to throw the ball. As Ellis later recalled, he was zeroed in on the glove, but I didn't hit the glove too much. Despite these severe hallucinations, he somehow managed to locate the strike zone consistently enough to get batters out. The Padres' lineup included solid major league hitters who should have been able to make contact against an impaired pitcher. Ellis walked 8 batters during the game, which shows his control was clearly affected by the drug. He also hit 1 batter with a pitch. But somehow, through 9 complete innings, not a single San Diego hitter managed to get a base hit off Ellis while he was actively hallucinating. This achievement represents something that should be physically impossible in professional sports. Elite athletic performance requires precise hand-eye coordination, split-second timing, and complete mental focus. LSD affects all of these abilities in ways that should make competitive sports performance completely impossible. Yet Ellis managed to throw 135 pitches and record 27 outs without allowing a hit. The no-hitter became a symbol of how completely substance abuse had been normalized within baseball culture during the 1970s. Players regularly used drugs and alcohol without serious consequences from their teams or the league. Ellis later worked as a substance abuse counselor, and he died in 2008. But not every tragedy in baseball came from players making destructive choices. Sometimes the most promising careers were cut short by forces completely beyond their control. Nick Adenhart. Nick Adenhart pitched the game of his life on April 8, 2009, throwing 6 scoreless innings for the Los Angeles Angels against the Oakland Athletics. The 22-year-old right-hander had finally reached the moment he had dreamed about since childhood. This was only his 4th career major league start, but Adenhart looked like a seasoned veteran on the mound. He struck out 5 batters while allowing just 7 hits, keeping the dangerous Oakland lineup completely off the scoreboard. Adenhart's path to this performance had been anything but easy. Tommy John surgery had sidelined him for most of 2007, forcing him to rebuild his arm strength and relearn his pitching mechanics. The rehabilitation process took nearly 2 years of grueling work in the minor leagues. Most young pitchers never fully recover from elbow reconstruction surgery, but Adenhart had beaten the odds through determination and countless hours of physical therapy. His father, Jim, had made the trip from Maryland to watch his son pitch at Angel Stadium. Jim Adenhart sat in the stands and watched Nick deliver strike after strike, seeing years of hard work finally paying off. The young pitcher's fastball reached the low 90s, and his changeup kept hitters off balance throughout the game. Nick left the game after 6 innings with his team leading 6-0, having given the Angels exactly what they needed from their young starter. After the game, Adenhart decided to celebrate with friends at a local restaurant and bar. He had earned the right to enjoy this moment after overcoming surgery and proving he belonged in the major leagues. Adenhart was riding high on adrenaline from his dominant performance and looking forward to many more starts in an Angels uniform. Hours later, Adenhart sat in a red Mitsubishi Eclipse at the intersection of Catella Avenue and Orangewood Avenue in Fullerton. The light was red, and he was waiting patiently with 2 friends in the car. At 12:19 a.m., a minivan ran the red light at high speed and crashed directly into their vehicle. The driver had a blood alcohol content of 0.19 and was on probation for a prior DUI. The collision killed Adenhart and passenger Courtney Stewart instantly. The third passenger, Henry Pearson, died later at the hospital from his injuries. Andrew Gallo, the drunk driver, was later convicted of 3 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to 51 years to life in prison. The Angels gave his family a full playoff share and retired his locker while wearing tributes throughout the season. The pitching staff and clubhouse were left with survivor guilt and the sense that a promising trajectory had been snatched away. His death shows how external negligence can destroy what took years of dedication to build. But sometimes the destruction came from within, creating cycles that even the most talented players couldn't escape. Josh Hamilton. Josh Hamilton was supposed to be baseball's ultimate redemption story, but his career became a repeating pattern that revealed how teams and media handle addiction. The Tampa Bay Devil Rays selected Hamilton as the first overall pick in the 1999 MLB draft, recognizing his incredible natural talent as both a hitter and outfielder. His high school statistics were amazing, and scouts believed he had the potential to become a superstar in the major leagues. Hamilton's raw ability was undeniable when he was clean and focused on baseball. His swing was smooth and powerful, generating tremendous bat speed that could turn any mistake pitch into a home run. His outfield defense was equally impressive, with the speed and arm strength to cover huge amounts of ground. When Hamilton won the American League MVP award in 2010, he hit .359 with 32 home runs and 100 RBIs for the Texas Rangers, proving that his talent was genuinely elite. The problem was that addiction kept derailing whatever momentum Hamilton built during his clean periods. His cocaine and alcohol problems first surfaced early in his professional career, completely sidelining him for nearly 3 full seasons in the early 2000s. He didn't make his MLB debut until 2007 at age 26, losing crucial developmental years that most players use to refine their skills and adjust to professional competition. His comeback with the Rangers seemed like the perfect story for teams and media to celebrate. Hamilton not only returned to baseball but became one of the best players in the game almost immediately. His 2008 home run derby performance at Yankee Stadium was legendary, as he launched 28 home runs in the first round alone. Fans and media loved the narrative of the troubled player who had overcome his demons through faith and determination. But the relapses kept coming in 2009, then again in 2012, and once more in 2015 when he self-reported to avoid suspension. Each time, the cycle repeated itself with teams and media celebrating his returns without addressing the underlying addiction issues. The Angels still signed him to a $125 million contract in 2012 despite his history, showing how organizations prioritize talent over addressing systemic problems. Hamilton's story continued after his playing days ended. In 2019, he was charged with assaulting his teenage daughter and eventually pleaded guilty to unlawful restraint charges. This incident showed that retirement from baseball had not solved his underlying problems. The pattern revealed how baseball's approach to addiction focused on celebrating comebacks rather than providing long-term support systems. But addiction wasn't the only dangerous behavior that teams preferred to ignore when young stars were involved. Yordano Ventura. Yordano Ventura had everything a young baseball player could want by age 25. His fastball reached 100 miles per hour consistently, making him one of the hardest throwers in Major League Baseball. The fiery right-hander from the Dominican Republic had helped the Kansas City Royals win the 2015 World Series with his dominant pitching and competitive fire. Over 4 MLB seasons, Ventura was 38-31 with a 3.89 ERA, and he had just signed a $23 million extension before his death. His blazing fastball and nasty curveball made him nearly unhittable when he commanded his pitches properly. Ventura was known throughout baseball for his intense competitive spirit and willingness to challenge any hitter. He never backed down from confrontations and often stared down batters after striking them out. This aggressive approach made him a fan favorite in Kansas City and earned respect from teammates who appreciated his fearless attitude on the mound. The background research documents patterns of risky driving among some young, newly wealthy players who suddenly have access to millions of dollars. The culture among young MLB players often celebrates expensive cars and extreme speed as symbols of success and status. Social media posts frequently showed players with their luxury vehicles, and reckless driving behavior was rarely criticized by teams or the league. Ventura owned multiple high-end vehicles and was known for driving them at dangerous speeds on roads that were not designed for such reckless behavior. This pattern of dangerous driving was common among young players who had grown up poor and suddenly found themselves with enough money to buy whatever they wanted. On January 22, 2017, Ventura was driving his Jeep Wrangler on a curved road in the Dominican Republic during the off-season. He was traveling at excessive speed when he approached a sharp curve that required much slower driving to navigate safely. Ventura lost control of the vehicle when he failed to slow down enough for the turn. The Jeep flipped violently after leaving the roadway. Ventura was ejected from the vehicle during the crash and died at the scene. His promising career ended in a completely preventable tragedy that shocked the baseball world. Another former MLB player, Andy Marte, died separately that same day, making January 22, 2017, one of the darkest days in recent baseball history. His death exposed how little the sport does to educate players about the dangers of high-speed driving or provide guidance about responsible spending. The Royals honored him with Ace 30 memorial patches in 2017, but his death highlighted the gap between celebrating young talent and protecting it from destructive choices. But not every tragedy came from reckless decisions. Sometimes players became victims of violence that had nothing to do with their own actions. Lyman Bostock. Lyman Bostock was having the best season of his career in 1978, hitting .336 for the California Angels and establishing himself as one of baseball's most promising young stars. The 27-year-old outfielder had signed a massive 5-year contract worth $2.25 million with the Angels during the offseason, making him one of the highest-paid players in baseball. His smooth swing and consistent hitting had made him a fan favorite, and scouts believed he was just entering his prime years as a hitter. Bostock had come from humble beginnings, growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, before starring at California State University Northridge. His professional career started with the Minnesota Twins, where he hit over 303 consecutive seasons. The Angels saw him as a cornerstone player who could anchor their lineup for years to come. His 1978 performance was backing up their investment completely. On September 23, 1978, Bostock was visiting his uncle in Gary, Indiana, during a road trip break. He was riding as a passenger in a car driven by his uncle's goddaughter, Barbara Smith, along with her 2 young children in the back seat. The group was simply driving through the neighborhood on what should have been a routine evening visit with family. Leonard Smith had been following his estranged wife Barbara's car because he suspected she was involved with another man. Smith was consumed with jealous rage and had decided to confront whoever he thought was having an affair with his wife. When he spotted the car at a red light and saw a man sitting in the passenger seat next to Barbara, he jumped to the wrong conclusion completely. Smith pulled his car up next to Barbara's vehicle while they waited at the traffic light. Without any warning or attempt to verify who was actually in the car, Smith reached for his shotgun and fired directly through the passenger window. Bostock was struck in the head and died 2 hours later at age 27, becoming the victim of a jealous husband's rage that was directed at the wrong person entirely. The legal aftermath of this senseless murder proved almost as shocking as the crime itself. Leonard Smith was charged with first-degree murder for killing Bostock, but his defense team argued that he was legally insane at the time of the shooting. The jury accepted this argument despite the premeditated nature of Smith's actions. Smith was found not guilty by reason of insanity and sentenced to a psychiatric hospital for treatment. He was released after serving just 7 months in the facility. The verdict provoked public outrage and later reforms to Indiana's insanity defense laws, but those changes came too late to bring back a talented player whose career was ended by completely random violence. Sometimes the violence came from strangers, but other times the danger came from people players were supposed to trust completely. Tyler Skaggs. Tyler Skaggs' death on July 1, 2019, initially appeared to be a tragic accident when the 27-year-old Angels pitcher was found unresponsive in his hotel room in Southlake, Texas. The team was on a road trip to play the Texas Rangers, and Skaggs had been expected to start the next day's game. His teammates were devastated when they discovered that one of their own had died suddenly during what should have been a routine road trip. The initial report suggested that Skaggs had simply passed away in his sleep, possibly from a heart condition or other natural cause. The Angels organization and Major League Baseball treated his death as a terrible but unexplained tragedy. Skaggs had been a solid pitcher for the team, posting a 4.29 ERA over his career and showing promise as a reliable starter in their rotation. The autopsy results changed everything about how people understood Skaggs' death. Medical examiners determined that he had died from opioid and alcohol-induced asphyxiation, meaning dangerous drugs had killed him. The toxicology report showed fentanyl and oxycodone in his system at lethal levels. This wasn't a natural death or a heart condition. Skaggs had been using dangerous substances that stopped his breathing while he slept. The investigation that followed revealed something much more disturbing than a player struggling with addiction on his own. Federal authorities discovered that the drugs in Skaggs' system hadn't come from street dealers or illegal sources. Instead, Eric Kay, the Angels communications director, had been supplying opioids directly to players on the team. An Angels staffer had used his position to supply opioids to players over several seasons. Kay had access to players and their trust, which he exploited to provide dangerous opioid medications that should only be available through legitimate medical prescriptions. Kay wasn't just enabling addiction among players. He was actively supplying the substances that were destroying their lives. Multiple Angels players testified during Kay's trial about receiving drugs from him over several seasons. These testimonies exposed a systemic problem within the organization where a team official was distributing controlled substances to athletes who trusted him. The scope of Kay's drug dealing showed this wasn't an isolated incident, but a pattern of behavior that had put many players at risk. The federal court system treated Kay's crimes with appropriate seriousness. He was convicted of drug distribution resulting in death and conspiracy charges. Kay received a 22-year prison sentence for his role in Skaggs' death and his years of supplying opioids to players. The team honored Skaggs on July 12, 2019, when Taylor Cole and Felix Pena threw a combined no-hitter while teammates wore his number 45. But Skaggs' death revealed how team officials can exploit their positions to enable deadly addictions among the athletes they're supposed to protect. Not every tragedy in baseball came from corruption or negligence. Sometimes the most devastating losses happened when players tried to do something genuinely heroic. Roberto Clemente. Roberto Clemente had already achieved everything possible in professional baseball by the end of 1972. The Pittsburgh Pirates right fielder had collected his 3,000th career hit during the final game of the regular season, finishing with a .317 career average. His 12 straight Gold Glove awards proved he was the best defensive outfielder of his generation. 4 National League batting titles showed his incredible hitting ability. 2 World Series championships with Pittsburgh had given him team success to match his individual accomplishments, including World Series MVP honors in 1971. On New Year's Eve 1972, Clemente was focused on something much more important than any baseball statistic he had ever compiled. A massive 6.3 magnitude earthquake had devastated Nicaragua on December 23, killing approximately 5,000 people and leaving hundreds of thousands homeless. The disaster had destroyed entire cities and created a humanitarian crisis that required immediate international assistance to prevent even more deaths from starvation and disease. Clemente immediately began organizing relief efforts from his home in Puerto Rico. He used his fame and connections to collect supplies, raise money, and coordinate shipments to the earthquake victims. Clemente personally supervised the loading of food, medicine, and clothing onto cargo planes headed for Nicaragua. His commitment to helping the earthquake victims went far beyond writing a check or making a public statement. Previous relief shipments had been stolen by corrupt officials or military personnel before reaching the people who desperately needed them. Clemente discovered that much of the aid being sent to Nicaragua was disappearing into the hands of people who planned to sell it for profit. This corruption meant that earthquake victims were dying while relief supplies sat in warehouses or got sold on the black market. Clemente decided he needed to accompany the final shipment personally to ensure the supplies reached their intended recipients. He believed his celebrity status would prevent officials from stealing the aid if he was present during the delivery. The DC-7 aircraft chosen for this flight was overloaded by about 4,193 pounds beyond its safe carrying capacity. The aircraft also had documented maintenance issues that should have prevented it from being cleared for flight. Multiple people warned Clemente about the dangerous condition of the aircraft before takeoff. Aviation experts told him the plane was not safe for flight, especially with such a heavy cargo load. Despite these warnings, Clemente insisted on making the humanitarian flight because he knew people were dying while waiting for help. The overloaded DC-7 crashed into the Atlantic Ocean shortly after takeoff from San Juan Airport. All 5 people aboard were killed, including Clemente. Major League Baseball renamed its humanitarian award in his honor, and he became the first Caribbean player elected to the Hall of Fame in 1973. But not every player who struggled with personal demons died while trying to help others. Steve Howe. Steve Howe was one of the most talented left-handed pitchers of his generation, but addiction turned his career into a revolving door of suspensions and failed comebacks. The Los Angeles Dodgers discovered Howe in the minor leagues and quickly realized they had found something special. His slider was devastating against both left-handed and right-handed hitters. His fastball had enough velocity to set up his breaking ball perfectly. After winning National League Rookie of the Year in 1980 with a 2.66 ERA and 17 saves, Howe helped the Dodgers win the 1981 World Series with dominant relief pitching throughout the playoffs. He was an all-star in 1982, and his performance in clutch situations made him one of the most valuable players on the team. Howe seemed destined for a long career as one of baseball's elite closers. Teams were already comparing him to the best relief pitchers in the game. The problem was that Howe's incredible talent kept earning him second chances from teams even as cocaine and alcohol addiction took control of his life. Each comeback was followed by another devastating relapse that wiped out whatever progress he had made during his clean periods. His behavior became increasingly unpredictable as substance abuse dominated his decision-making. Howe was suspended 7 separate times for substance abuse violations throughout his career. He missed the entire 1984 season due to suspension, costing him a full year of earnings and development. The suspensions kept getting longer as baseball officials tried to force him into sobriety through punishment rather than treatment. Major League Baseball issued a controversial lifetime ban against Howe in 1992 after his 7th violation. The ban was later overturned through legal challenges, allowing him to return in 1993. After a period of sobriety, Howe posted a solid 1.80 ERA in 1994, proving his arm was still effective when he stayed clean. This success convinced teams to keep giving him chances despite his repeated failures. By 1996, his career was effectively finished, but his struggles with addiction continued long after baseball. The pattern repeated itself throughout his career: repeated second chances, escalating punishments, and eventual relapse. The revolving door approach never addressed the underlying addiction that was destroying his life. Howe's story had one final tragic chapter that occurred a full decade after his playing days ended. On April 28, 2006, he died in a single-car accident in Coachella, California, while driving under the influence of methamphetamine. His pickup truck flipped multiple times after leaving the roadway at high speed. His death represented the final tragic outcome of a long, unresolved addiction problem, and the league's cyclical responses that never provided real solutions. The pattern in Howe's case wasn't unique to his situation alone. These 11 stories reveal a disturbing pattern about how Major League Baseball operates as a business first and a sport second. The common thread isn't just tragedy, it's how systematically these stories have been buried, downplayed, or sanitized by the baseball establishment. From medical negligence to addiction, enabling to institutional cover-ups, baseball's wholesome image masks decades of putting profits over player welfare. The league protects its brand by controlling narratives and limiting uncomfortable discussions about player deaths and destroyed careers. Media outlets cooperate by focusing on feel-good stories rather than investigating systematic failures. Fans deserve to know the real cost of America's pastime. Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson made other professional athletes look like weekend warriors. This guy ran a 4.12 40-yard dash at 227 pounds, then casually launched baseballs over 500 feet like he was playing catch in his backyard. Most players dedicate their entire lives to mastering one sport. Bo treated baseball as his summer hobby while simultaneously dominating the NFL. He would finish football season in January, show up to baseball spring training without any preparation, and immediately start hitting bombs that left pitchers shaking their heads. The numbers from his 1989 season tell the story of what could have been. Bo hit 32 home runs and stole 26 bases, becoming one of the rare power speed threats in American League history. Scouts were projecting him as a potential 40-40 player with gold glove defense in the outfield. His arm strength was so ridiculous that runners stopped trying to take extra bases when he fielded the ball. The thing is, this was Bo at maybe 70% effort because he was splitting time between two sports. Full-time baseball players couldn't match what he did part-time. Bo Jackson remains the only athlete ever named to all-star teams in both Major League Baseball and the NFL. He hit .250 with 141 home runs in just 4 baseball seasons while playing football during the offseason. His power-speed combination defied basic physics. Players his size aren't supposed to run that fast. Players that fast aren't supposed to hit balls that far. Bo did both while making it look effortless. The most frustrating part was watching him make impossible plays look routine. He would break his bat on a swing and still drive the ball 400 feet. He ran through outfield walls chasing fly balls like the wall was made of paper. Other players worked their entire careers to develop the skills Bo was born with. He barely tried and still made highlight reels every week. The cruel irony is that football destroyed his baseball potential. The sport he loved more ended up costing him greatness in the sport where he could have been legendary. During a January 1991 playoff game, Bo suffered a hip injury that effectively ended his football career. The injury damaged the blood flow to his hip joint, requiring replacement surgery that changed everything about his athletic ability. Without that hip injury, Bo Jackson could have redefined what was possible in baseball. A healthy Bo playing full-time baseball for 15 years might have hit 500 home runs while stealing 400 bases. Instead, we got 4 seasons of part-time brilliance before his body broke down. Bo Jackson proved that some athletes are just built different, but his story also shows how quickly everything can change. The human body has limits, even for Superman, Ken Griffey Jr. Ken Griffey Jr. had the most effortless swing in baseball history, and the math shows he was on pace to break every major home run record before his body completely betrayed him. Jr.'s swing was so smooth that hitting coaches still use his mechanics as the gold standard for teaching young players. The crazy part is that this perfect swing was tracking toward numbers that would have made him the greatest power hitter of all time. By age 30, Griffey had already smashed 398 home runs with a career .296 batting average. To put this into perspective, he was ahead of Hank Aaron's pace at the same age by 22 home runs. Aaron finished with 755 career homers, which means a healthy Griffey was looking at somewhere around 800 home runs for his career. The projection wasn't even close. It was basically a mathematical certainty if his body held up. The thing is, Griffey's body didn't just break down gradually like most aging players. He went from effortless perfection to living permanently in the trainer's room. The injuries started piling up during his prime years in Cincinnati, when he should have been demolishing home run records. His left hamstring became a recurring nightmare that cost him months at a time. Wrist problems made it painful to swing the bat that had once moved like poetry. Ankle injuries slowed down his legendary defense in center field. The numbers are staggering when you add up all the time Griffey lost to injuries. He was placed on the disabled list 12 times during his career and played fewer than 130 games in 11 of his 22 seasons due to various physical problems. That's several full seasons worth of baseball where fans couldn't watch the smoothest swing in the sport. During those missed games, healthy Griffey probably would have hit another 100 home runs based on his career averages. The cruel reality is how close Jr. came to catching Aaron's record, even with all those injuries. He finished with 630 home runs, just 125 behind Aaron's mark. Simple math shows that those missed games would have given him enough at-bats to surpass 755 homers and challenge Barry Bonds for the all-time record. Instead of debating steroids and asterisks, we could have been celebrating the most beloved home run king in baseball history. Griffey's story proves that even the most gifted players can't escape their body's limitations. His swing never changed. It remained that perfect, effortless motion that looked like he was barely trying. But hamstrings tear, wrists get sore, and ankles give out regardless of how talented you are. The smoothest swing in baseball history was ultimately cut short by the most frustrating injuries imaginable, reminding us that physical durability matters just as much as natural ability. Tony Conigliaro, a single 90-mile-per-hour fastball on August 18, 1967, ended what could have been the greatest power-hitting career in baseball history. Tony Conigliaro was standing in the batter's box at Fenway Park when Jack Hamilton's pitch changed everything in one terrible moment. The sound of the ball hitting Tony C's face was so loud that players in both dugouts heard it clearly over the crowd noise. Tony Conigliaro was the youngest player ever to reach 100 home runs in Major League Baseball history. He hit his 100th homer at age 22 years and 197 days old, beating even the great Jimmy Fox's record by several months. By his 22nd birthday, Tony C had already launched 104 home runs while playing his home games at Fenway Park, which wasn't exactly known as a hitter-friendly ballpark in the 1960s. His power numbers were so impressive that scouts and baseball analysts were projecting him to challenge Babe Ruth's career home run record of 714. The thing is, Conigliaro wasn't just hitting cheap home runs or benefiting from a short porch. His power was legitimate and consistent across different ballparks. During his age 20 season in 1965, he led the American League with 32 home runs, becoming the youngest player ever to lead either league in homers. He was hitting tape measure shots that cleared the Green Monster by 50 feet and landed in the parking lots beyond Fenway's left field wall. The August 18th game against the California Angels started like any other night game. Hamilton was a journeyman pitcher known for his wild fastball. When Tony C stepped into the box in the fourth inning, Hamilton's pitch sailed high and inside. The ball struck Conigliaro directly in the left cheekbone and eye socket, fracturing his cheekbone and causing severe damage to his vision. The impact was so severe that he collapsed immediately and had to be carried off the field on a stretcher. The medical reality of Tony C's injury was devastating for a baseball player. The beaning damaged his depth perception permanently, making it nearly impossible to track incoming pitches properly. Depth perception is critical for hitting because players need to judge the exact location and speed of a baseball traveling over 90 miles per hour. Without proper depth perception, even the most talented hitters struggle to make consistent contact. Conigliaro attempted several comebacks over the next few years, but his vision problems made it impossible to return to his previous level. He managed just 20 more home runs in parts of 4 seasons after the injury. One pitch robbed baseball of a potential Hall of Fame career and showed how quickly violence can rewrite everything about a player's future. Lyman Bostock. The shocking irony of Lyman Bostock's story is that he was murdered just months after returning part of his salary to the California Angels because he felt he wasn't earning his paycheck. Most professional athletes fight for every dollar they can get. Bostock actually gave money back because his conscience wouldn't let him keep what he hadn't earned on the field. Lyman Bostock was entering his prime as a major league hitter with a career .311 batting average through 4 seasons. He wasn't just a singles hitter either. His approach at the plate was getting better each year. Bostock had learned to work counts, draw walks, and drive in runs consistently. His .311 average ranked among the top contact hitters in the American League during the mid-1970s when pitching dominated the game. The thing that made Bostock special was his character off the field. During his first month with the Angels in 1978, he struggled at the plate and felt he wasn't living up to his contract. Instead of making excuses or waiting for his performance to improve, Bostock actually returned a portion of his salary to the team. He told Angels management that he hadn't earned the money they were paying him and wanted to give some back until his hitting improved. Angels manager Jim Fregosi was convinced that Bostock would win multiple American League batting titles during his career. Fregosi had managed plenty of talented hitters, but he saw something special in Bostock's approach and work ethic. His prediction seemed reasonable considering Bostock's steady improvement and his OPS plus of 123, which was well above league average for the era. The statistical projections for Bostock looked solid heading into the 1979 season. He was just 27 years old and entering what should have been his peak years as a hitter. Players typically reach their offensive prime between ages 27 and 30, which meant Bostock had his best seasons ahead of him. His combination of contact ability and emerging power suggested he could become one of the American League's premier offensive players. The cruel reality is that Bostock's generous character conflicted with the random violence that ended his life. On September 23, 1978, he was shot and killed in Gary, Indiana, while visiting family. The shooting was completely random. Bostock was an innocent victim of street violence that had nothing to do with him personally. He was just 27 years old and had recently started hitting better for the Angels. The timing couldn't have been more cruel. Bostock was finally hitting his stride as a professional player after returning that salary money. Random tragedies struck one of baseball's most genuinely good people, just as he was proving he belonged among the game's elite hitters. J.R. Richard, a 6'8" pitcher throwing fastballs over 100 miles per hour, should have dominated baseball for 15 years, but J.R. Richard's own circulatory system nearly killed him at age 30. Richard was the most intimidating presence on any pitcher's mound during the late 1970s. Hitters stepped into the batter's box knowing they were about to face triple-digit heat from a giant who could place that fastball anywhere he wanted. J.R. Richard was the most dominant pitcher in baseball before his stroke ended everything. He led the National League in strikeouts during both 1978 and 1979,